a lot of people are conditioned to think that we need to suppress our pain or ignore our pain. And really, we should be paying attention to our bodies and those signs that are telling us that something is off. So for me, I stopped having my period earlier on in the year. There was a lot of ups and downs in terms of my energy levels, sleeping long hours, feeling tired, exhausted, not able to feel rested. And then also feeling bursts of anxiety and frustration, just like my emotions were all over the place. And I had really bad heart palpitations to the point where I would lay down to go to sleep at night and would feel it and feel almost like in my entire body, up to my head, all of it vibrating from my heart beating so hard and fast.
Information presented on this video is for education and entertainment purposes only. If you have a medical condition, please seek advice of a licensed medical practitioner. Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to the Health Wizard podcast. Today, I have a special treat for you, and I know that I say this every single episode, but I say it because I mean it. Today, I'm going to be interviewing one of my current clients. A lot of the times I will bring in graduates of the program who have arrived to that 100% mark, but I love to do in-progress interviews with men and women who are still on their journey to their 100%. And today's guest, Karina, she is no exception. She came to me 5 months ago, having been diagnosed with hyperthyroidism and Graves' disease, and she was already in progression of developing either a goiter or a nodule, but her throat was swelling. She had 23 symptoms, and the doctors told her that the only way forward was through either radiation, medication, or a thyroidectomy. And none of those sounded like a plan for her life that she wanted for herself, because all of them meant side effects. All of them meant giving up something in order to hopefully gain something, which was not a guarantee. So as she came to me, we hyper-focused on the root causes of what was driving the development of hyperthyroidism and Graves' disease. And we were quickly able to drill it down to a handful of root causes. So not one, not two, but a handful. And these are going to be the very things that we're going to discuss on the interview today. And as Karina shares her life with you, I hope that you're going to take notes, because a lot of these things are not discussed in the mainstream health industry. So without further ado, I'm bringing Karina in so that she can tell you about her healing journey, where she is now, and where her health and her newfound tools for health are taking her in the next few months. Karina, it is so nice to have you on this interview, on this podcast, because let's be honest, when you and I were both looking for health answers, we always wanted to look for proof. Not only that there is some kind of good news for us to get better, but we wanted to know, was there anybody else who was like me in a similar predicament who could have, would have, should have reversed this disease? I know I looked for it, and that was back before the internet exploded as it has now. I found none. And then you, just a few months ago, 5 months ago, you were looking for proof. So as I'm interviewing you, you'll be that proof for somebody else. So thank you for being here.
Yes, I'm happy to be here and happy to do that, because that's what brought me to you ultimately, was seeing that proof. And so hopefully someone will resonate with, my story and the experience with working with you.
Well, let's jump right into it. Why don't you tell the audience about how and what drove you to start looking for somebody like me? What was it that you were diagnosed with? What were you struggling with that led you to say, I want something different?
Yeah, so what ultimately led me to looking for a different resource and finding you was I was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism, ultimately Graves' disease, in June. And the doctors, when you're looking online and looking for solutions for hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease, ultimately what you're going to find is taking antithyroid medication and doing radioactive iodine. And I had seen what that had done to someone, through my mother and through other people, and through doing my research, finding that that wasn't really a solution for me. That was fixing one problem with another problem, and ultimately having to be on synthetic hormones basically for the rest of my life wasn't a solution. And I wanted to find something alternative, something ideally holistic and natural. And I wasn't finding anything. I was searching everywhere, and I was really feeling really defeated, talking to multiple doctors and multiple specialists. And through my searching, I found you. I found an interview just like this that we're doing today with someone else who also had hyperthyroidism, and found that you had a solution that was all natural, without any medication, without having to do the radioactive iodine. And it was the first glimpse of hope that I had found through probably about a month of searching elsewhere. So that's what brought me to you.
Yeah, and a month is not, it's considerably a short time compared to me. I looked for years, and I know some other clients who end up being here, they look for years. So I'm so happy for the advancement and the appearance of internet in our life, because it makes the connection of souls like you and I possible. And I'm grateful for that. I want to touch a little bit on what you just mentioned. The doctors were, once you were diagnosed with Graves' disease, they were saying medications, but only for an X amount of time, because we know that methimazole, which is prescribed for Graves' disease, is short-lived. It cannot be used for more than about 6 to 7 years, because it will affect your kidneys and livers and so on and other organs. And that ultimately leads doctors to recommending radioactive iodine treatment. That is when they radiate your thyroid by you taking a radioactive pill, and you actually cannot be around people for a few days at that time. That's how radioactive you are. And even cases of you not being around your pets, especially birds, because they would actually drop dead if they were around you. Another option that they offer us is, if that doesn't work, then instead we can just cut it out. And of course, if you cut out your thyroid or radiate your thyroid, then you have no thyroid left. With radiation, it's dead. It's a dead piece of body sitting inside your body, and you're struggling. And like you said, lifetime commitment to medications. And with a thyroidectomy, you're going to have a scar on your neck. They're going to go in, they're going to splice you open, take it out. And as you eloquently said, that it is a problem. To solve one problem, you're creating another problem, but you are not addressing the root cause of the problem. Now, I know when you first found me in the interview that you watched, it's something that we always talk about, that is identifying the root cause of your problem. Can you tell me, based on what you've heard from my website, the interviews, what was it that sparked your attention? And you said, okay, I do want to continue in this path, and I want to talk to you, Elena, that led you to saying yes eventually to what we do now.
Part of what stood out to me through our initial interview and conversation, and looking at your website and also other interviews, the main thing for me was the fact that you were taking a holistic approach and holistic view of health and healing. So based on my journey before being diagnosed, I'd kind of gone through my own journey of, connecting with myself, healing my body, my emotions, and I needed assistance in doing more, like further work. And I knew that this diagnosis wasn't just my physical body. I knew it was more than that. It was emotions. It was, things from my past, my childhood, that I still carried and were trapped in my body. And those things manifest into illness. And I knew very well that it was a connection of mind, body, spirit. And the fact that you addressed that was key for me. Like I wasn't looking for just the body part of it. I wanted the holistic view of healing. And that's what you do, which is what I knew I wanted.
What I'm hearing is that you are interested in spirit, soul, body, because at the end of the day, we're not spirit, soul, body. We're just a one being connected all. But the Western society, the religious society, they're separating us into this either a two-part being, right? There's some kind of life force in us, and there's body, or there's spirit, soul, and body. Where in reality, as long as we are in this one body, we are just us. So everything, whether it's trauma, whether it's a deficiency, whether it's a genetic mutation or a poor diet, everything is affecting us. Now, before I take the trauma piece any deeper, which we will, because that's an interesting part that you brought up, I want you to just describe, you said that you were diagnosed with Graves, but can you tell me what symptoms or in what way did that Graves affect you that made your life miserable? Because there are people who get diagnosed and then they'll spend years feeling like, I'm okay, I don't need to address this. So they have the diagnosis, but not necessarily the full expression of the illness.
Some of the symptoms that I was experiencing, and ultimately what got me to the point of getting labs done and getting things checked out, there were a lot of elements, and there were some elements that were subtle, and then some of them were extreme. And the reason I say that is because I feel like where a lot of people are conditioned to think that we need to suppress our pain or ignore our pain. And really, we should be paying attention to our bodies and those signs that are telling us that something is off. So for me, I stopped having my period earlier on in the year. There was a lot of ups and downs in terms of my energy levels, sleeping long hours, feeling tired, exhausted, not able to feel rested, and then also feeling bursts of anxiety and frustration. Just like my emotions were all over the place. And I haven't been someone to regularly suffer from anxiety or from those like high emotions. And I was experiencing that. There was a lot.
Well, let's talk about heart palpitations. I know those
Yes.
are something that affects a lot of people with thyroid issues. And for you, it was so much so that you could not even work out as much as you used to love to do.
For me, I love working out. I like doing like high intensity. I like getting my heart running and beating fast. And I had really bad heart palpitations to the point where I would lay down to go to sleep at night and would feel it and feel almost like in my entire body, up to my head, all of it vibrating from my heart beating so hard and fast. So that was definitely a symptom and a scary one. I lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, the weight loss was a big one for you because most people who come to me, they suffer with thyroid issues is the opposite, right? They gain too much weight. People with hyperthyroidism and people with Graves' disease, they are usually underweight, and that led you to not feel as comfortable in your body. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I lost a lot of weight due to, I mean, those are symptoms of Graves' disease. And it was a lot. And I already felt like I was living a pretty active and healthy lifestyle and eating pretty naturally. And I mean, there were definitely some changes that you and I did that I think for the better, but I still working out regularly and I considered myself pretty fit and lost almost 30 pounds on top of that, which when I tell people in my life, they're like, you didn't have 30 pounds to lose. And it's true. I did it. And so I felt very uncomfortable in my body because of that. I felt I lost all my strength, like what I used to do in the gym or what I could pick up, for example, like I would pick up water for my mom and it was like a 6 pack of like the jugs of water and I could barely pick it up. Like I struggled to grab that. And that to me was like a symbol of just the strength that I had lost because I used to be able to pick that up no problem, take it up the stairs. So it was just things like that where I felt really weak. I felt really disconnected to my body. I knew that there was something wrong and that ultimately led me to getting my labs done.
Yeah. And so the labs are done. You found me, and we say yes to each other till health do us part. So not death, until health do us part. And
Yes.
that's the goal for me to get my clients to a point where they no longer need me. And you and I are very close to that. But we started to work on it. And one of the first things that we did, we changed your diet because there were some digestive issues you were facing. But very quickly, within a couple of weeks, you and I both knew that we needed to take your healing to a very different area where we know none of the doctors and none of the most of the specialists out there or coaches or anybody, they really take people to. That is built
Yeah.
into a healing protocol, and that is trauma, early childhood trauma, adulthood trauma, emotional trauma, and traumas come in different forms. The women and men I have worked with usually had emotional or psychological or physical or sexual trauma. There could be other social traumas and so on, but the biggest ones usually boil down to early childhood, either abandonment or there's sexual trauma or there's some kind of violence and so on. So you and I went on the journey of discovering things. Now, when you came to me, you were way ahead of a lot of people who come to me and say, well, I didn't know trauma causes this. You already did some work into releasing that trauma, but yet we found that there was more to do.
What really showed me that that there was more trauma to be released and more work to be done was the state of my health. Ultimately, to me, the fact that I had been diagnosed with Graves' disease showed that there was still work to do, that my healing wasn't done with both my physical and my emotional. So the work that I had done prior to finding you and prior to getting diagnosed was only a year or two in the making, and I barely skimmed the surface. I didn't have a coach or a therapist or any other kind of outside help. I did a lot of this on my own, and a lot of it was just discovering what was there. I think we are like kind of how I said before, we're conditioned to suppress a lot of our emotions. We're conditioned to ignore a lot of the things that our body is communicating to us. And I had for years ignored and suppressed a lot of those emotions. And in the couple years prior to being diagnosed and meeting you, I was just barely skimming the surface and discovering what was actually inside my body and the emotions that I didn't even know existed, that I didn't even know trauma events that had happened in my life, I didn't even know happened until 2 years prior to meeting you. So a lot of what we had to do was dive deeper. It was really dive deeper and look at what were the things that were still living in my body or in my subconscious that needed to be released.
Right. And for a lot of people, when they're listening to you saying, how can you not remember the trauma? If trauma is very acute, especially childhood trauma, we, as children, to survive, we try to cope with it. We bury it deep in our psyche so much that, and a self-protection mechanism, and it's also a mechanism to a lot of times to protect the perpetrators, because we don't feel safe, because we're so little, we cannot stand up for ourselves. So when we do that, we can bury that trauma and we bury those memories. But what you bury on the outside, no matter how deeply you shove it in, it still creates a state of dis-ease inside of your body. And for you, that was certainly the case. And also in a Western society, what are we taught? Get up, shake it off, move on, get over it. And with trauma, it simply does not work. And for those of you who didn't have an acute severe trauma, stress that is building up over time in your bodies does the same thing. Unless you have specific mechanisms and specific tools to release that trauma, you are going to end up burying it deep inside. And it's kind of like a volcano. It kind of bubbles up to the surface slowly, slowly until it erupts. And for a lot of us, it erupts. For me, it was a thyroid disorder. It was infertility. I had a pituitary tumor. For you, it was a hyperthyroidism and Graves' disease. For somebody, it can be infertility, endometriosis, and so on. So
Yeah.
you and I discovered that there was still trauma. And again, you are much more self-aware than a lot of people who start working with me. But when you learn that there still was trauma to be uncovered, there are people who will go on the defensive, like, I really don't want to do this. It's too much pain. Tell me about your thought process and what made you open to the idea of let's go deeper and heal it, even though it's not going to feel okay.
Yeah, I think what allowed me to feel comfortable diving deeper with you was a lot of the work that I had done prior was with plant medicine. And that allowed me to really look at my pain and my past as something that doesn't need to weigh me down and something that I need to move through in order to come out on the other side. So in order to heal, we have to experience the pain that we suppressed or didn't want to feel in the past. It's scary, especially for a lot of people who have no idea about that inner work that needs to be done, especially if you've never faced the pain or the suffering that you experienced and don't want to experience again. And that's why it's so helpful to have, someone, a third party, some sort of help, a coach, a therapist, someone to guide you through that, because it can be scary. It can be intimidating and feeling like maybe that can take over. But I knew that was the key to my healing. I knew that in order to heal, in order to come out the other end, I needed to dive deeper in these emotions.
It's a really much a hero journey here. It is a person who knows it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be pleasant. But one of the key things that you said, we need to move through this emotion. So the idea of healing trauma and releasing trauma and bringing it up from the past is not to go back to living in it, which would be scary for a lot of people.
Yes.
And I think sometimes this is what will differentiate therapists from a coach. Is for a coach, it was important for you to remember the details so that we can move through them. For a therapist, and not all therapists are alike, given I respect the field of therapy, but I also know the shortcomings. A lot of the times in the especially older school of thought is, let's blame the parties who inflicted the pain on you, which will maintain you in a state of victimhood instead of giving you the tools that you need to reclaim yourself. Karina, I know that at this point, a lot of listeners going, trauma. Yes, I have trauma, but they are really interested. We're human, we're curious. What kind of trauma happened in your life that eventually built up into creating an autoimmune disease, if you're open to discuss that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's multiple layers of it. And I think a lot of the trauma that we experience from our childhood, if we don't deal with it or work through that, it manifests in different patterns in our life and in our adult life. And so I think that there's layers to my trauma in my childhood as well as my adulthood. The main one for me was discovering that I was sexually abused as a child. And I think through that created an abandonment wound, a wound of not feeling safe, safe in my body, safe to speak up, safe to be seen. And so a lot of that played in my relationship with my parents. I had trauma around my relationship with my mother and feeling unheard, unseen. And again, that's not to put blame on her or my parents or my caregivers. It's not about blame. It's about recognizing where I didn't receive the things that I needed and where I internalized pain or internalized stories about myself based on those experiences. And then that played in my adult life, being married and going through a divorce at a young age because I was cheated on, and it was a very traumatic experience for me, but I never expressed those emotions. I recognize now it was through working with you and diving deeper that I finally revisited that pain and the pain from all of those experiences, but this one in particular because I know that I think I shed a tear when I experienced that. It wasn't something that I like mourned the loss of my partner who I was with for 9 years. And I never mourned that experience or felt the pain from that experience. And I had to go back and allow that to be released.
Whew, heavy, right? Heavy, but a lot of us have gone through a lot of similar things and going through childhood trauma that was sexual abuse and then not feeling protected, that your parents were not there to protect you. It could have, and it does soil our relationship with those people. And like you said, not to place blame, but this is how we internalize and process the world. But yet, as children, we need to grow up, and as children, we still want to find safety. So we always justify something one way or another, and we bury deep within. But one of the interesting things that you said is we oftentimes we bottle up these emotions and we put them away. But
Mhm.
one of the biggest healing pieces that we do with our clients, including you, is honoring our emotions. So when I feel angry, I feel angry. It doesn't mean I have to go and injure somebody, but I fully feel anger. I express myself through anger. I don't go, I'm going to be such a polite person and I'm angry, but I'm not going to show it. I find a safe way, a safe container to express my anger that would not injure others, but so that anger can fully run through my body. If I feel grief, I think you and I had a call one time and I told you I spent the day before crying for like most of the day because my mother passed away this year. And one morning I wake up and I feel this grief. And instead of just pushing it aside, I blocked off my whole day from calls and all. And I basically spent the whole day as I was going through my day and doing my daily chores and whatnot, crying and stopping when I need to. And my daughter saw me going through that. And it didn't freak me out and didn't freak her out because she was allowed to see what human emotions look like and to honor them. There was
Yeah.
one time when I woke up and there was no reason to cry, but I still felt like I was grieving on the inside as opposed to shoving it down and saying, just deal with it. We're going to push through it, which is a very much an American mindset. I said,
Yeah.
let's schedule this container of time where we can feel safe to do so. I journaled, I wrote poetry. Whenever I feel blue, I write poetry. I wrote poetry. My daughter is near me. We talked with her and I just laid and I cried. And that was okay because in order for me not to have what you ended up with, all these emotions that build up as energy in your body, which is negative energy, which feels like excess weight. So while you lost 30 pounds of your weight, Karina, it probably felt like you were carrying 100 pounds of excess weight from just the emotions. And so in order for that to happen, what do? We allow those emotions to complete themselves. For me, if I'm going to feel joy, it's not going to be just, oh my goodness, I'm so happy. It's going to be joy. I'm going to be jumping. I'm going to be dancing, even if it's on the counter. I don't care, because we need to express ourselves fully in order to become a whole being throughout and in order to heal. So you had this build up from your early childhood then into your adulthood. And now no wonder your body is expressing itself in the illness, because your body says, attention, Karina, since you did not pay attention to me when you were a kid, and of course, it's not blaming you because you couldn't, or as an adult going through this divorce, I'm going to make you sick. So then you're going to schedule me into your calendar and you're going to put yourself first, which means me. And then we can finally release all of this excess weight that I've been carrying for you. And then you can be happy and I can be whole. So your body got your attention, didn't it?
Absolutely.
You came to me 23 symptoms and counting, I think, at that time. And then the work began. Now, as you and I dove through this process, as I alluded to this before, we changed your diet. We changed the way you did your supplements. I'm pretty much into supplements, so we do as little as possible. And we hyper-focused with you specifically because for me, each client is different. For some, I will look, maybe it's a deficiency or genetic mutation or something else. For you, it was obvious the diet needed to be improved on and the trauma needed to be worked. What pieces of working through traumatic events, what parts of you working through the trauma allowed you to see a connection to your, like, maybe not immediate improvement, but improvement shortly after?
Yeah, it's kind of incredible, the patterning and the series of events that led to me seeing results. And obviously we made the changes in my diet at the initial stages of working together, and that changed some symptoms right away. And I think it was I could see my numbers. We could see my numbers changing gradually. And I felt like it, but it was like very small changes. It was like very little bit. And
Well, I'm going to jump into that one. Given that when you probably heard the interview with whoever I was interviewing that you listened to, we have some cases. Sometimes somebody comes to me in 2-3 weeks, or say 7-8 weeks later, they're like an 100%. And it's not the case for everybody. And that's why I love having this interview right now with you, because we're still in process. We're still not 100%. We're over 85 or 90, I believe, but we're still inching along. But for you, progress was measured by the work that you were doing. Well, for some people, they changed the diet. Right now, we have a client. She came to me with Graves' disease and after having been radiated, but we're 3 weeks in and she is already at the 80% mark. And then we have people who come in like you, and you need to really put in the work.
But it was gradual progress, but I was being patient, and I knew that everyone's journey is different and these things can take time. It takes time. Like something that you said to me was that it takes time to get sick. And so it sometimes takes time to heal. Granted, it's not going to take the same amount of time, but it's still, it takes patience. And so I was being patient. I've been working on connecting with myself, my subconscious, really understanding the things that I need, connecting to my body, and a lot of things that were coming up for me that needed to be worked on. I was dreaming a lot. Like there was a lot of dream activity, and I would talk to you about that. And we even have integrated certain herbs later on that have helped with the dream state. And that has really aided me a lot. And it didn't, like, for example, there was a lot coming up with my family directly related to me not feeling heard, or like my emotions or needs didn't matter. And I know that that can directly correlate to the thyroid. A lot of what happens with the thyroid, if you believe in the chakra system, that's your throat chakra. If that is blocked, which thyroid is a correlation to your throat being blocked, which means an expression of speaking your truth, of being heard. And so I knew that that was the case for me, because every time I would speak up, in case in whether it was like about my emotions, whether it was publicly or in a class, I would always, it was like I would contract. It was like my voice would like contract, and it wasn't my normal voice, or I would have emotions would come up whenever it was time for me to express myself. So I knew that that was an element that I needed to work on. And it's funny how things just kind of aligned in my life to then directly like it face my issues. For example, one thing that happened was I was on a trip with my family and it happened to be on the full moon. That doesn't matter to some people, to me it does. And it just so happened that something came up. It triggered my mom. She reacted. My sister was there. She reacted. My dad was, we were all in the same hotel room and two beds. And we went in and we started talking. And it was clear that there was resentment that was still there, that there was anger that was still there, that was being held on to from years in the past. It wasn't present things that had happened. But through that, we were able to talk and address about everything. And it wasn't just a one-on-one between like me and my mother, for example, or me and my father, for example, because it was all of us together. It really was able to, other people were able to understand and be a little bit unbiased. Like if someone reacts out of anger or defensiveness, then they may maybe not listening the other person and how they're communicating. And through having all of us there, I was able to have my voice be heard and interpreted in a way that was accurate versus someone getting defensive or shutting me out, which has happened in the past. And we were able to come to not even an agreement or even a solution, but it was just a state of peace because we had all expressed what we needed to express. We all expressed our truth, how we felt, how we wanted to be treated, how we wanted to move forward with our relationship as a family. And it was very healing on multiple levels, not only for myself, my sister, my dad, my mom. That happened one week. And I want to say it was only a couple weeks later, I knew that the work had to be done with related to my ex-husband because he was coming up a lot in my dreams. Again, it was like dream life triggering things for me. So I knew that there was work to be done. I spent probably 48 hours. I had my space alone and I knew I was going to be alone and not disturbed for that time. So I really took that time to revisit conversations and I needed to do a cord cutting ceremony, which ultimately cuts the energetic tie between us because he was appearing in my dreams, I knew that there was still some sort of energetic connection. And I really allowed myself for 48 hours to feel all the emotions that I never allowed myself to feel. I didn't expect things to come up because the state that I was in, I felt like I was already healed. I felt like I could bring him up. It wasn't an issue. It didn't cause emotion in me. I could talk about what had happened with us and I wouldn't start crying. So for me, in that sense, I felt like I was fine. And there's a lot of people that are like, I don't have emotions tied to this. It doesn't trigger any emotions, so I'm good. I'm fine. But that's not the truth. I knew there was still layers there that I'd never expressed. Like I never really cried about it. And so I really allowed this time to focus and really like sit in that experience and those emotions and allow the space for them to come out because I really understand that I often was someone who distracted, who had a busy life, who had things to do. And that was how I distracted myself from my own emotions. And so with this space and time, it was focused on this is the space that I'm going to allow to release this. And it came forward. It came out full force. I'm talking like crying for hours and crying and feeling like I was that old version of myself, finally releasing what I never allowed myself to release. And in those two main monumental expressions of my emotions and really healing of my past, the next labs that came through were a huge jump in the right direction. And I'm talking finally one of the numbers normal and the other ones very, very close. So it was proof to me that the expression of the emotions and the trapped ones were monumental in my healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot of people don't realize, and again, it's because of how the Western medicine has become. We see a problem and not really a problem. We see a symptoms, we define that as a problem, and we medicate the heck out of it. There's another interview that I had done with one of my mentors when it comes to psychedelic medicine. We talk about how we medicate a person's symptom and we are calling it the disease, but in reality that creates a new state of disease. And in that case, when the interview where I discussed it, it was with anxiety, depression, and so on. And the medicine that is given to soldiers, for example, not to be depressed, eventually leads them to commit suicide. So medicating one symptom to create multiple other symptoms is not the way out, but to go where you have gone. Instead of being medicated, you took full ownership and you said, yes, I'm going to change the diet. And I actually put you on one of the most strict diets that there is out there in my protocol because it was needed. And I believe it also helped you from being distracted with all different foods that you can make. It's kept the diet very simple so that you can focus on your emotions and the trauma that needed to be released. But as you were doing that, and like I said, it needed to be done, the supplement that needed to be taken and the diet that needed to be changed, but the bulk of the healing needed to be in this area. The amazing thing is that there was a numerical change in your labs, in your T3, T4, free T3, T4, and so on. And we could measure your commitment to your progress by the labs you were getting. And each time you got labs, they were different. Now, a lot of people look at this and think, how is that possible? But before Western medicine became what it is now, and I worked with a college professor about 5 years ago, and we were talking, she had Graves' disease. And one of the first things with her, I noticed that there was a lot of trauma in her by the language that she expressed, by how she talked about people, how she discussed herself. And I said, let's dive into your early childhood trauma. And I started naming things, and she goes, how did you know? I said, well, your words gave you away, your body language gives you away. But after I have spoken with her and I've given her tools similar to yours to go and express emotions and feel and complete the journey, she went into her database and she said, going back to 1920s and 30s and 40s, there were studies done that were connecting expression of autoimmune diseases such as Graves' disease to traumatic events in people's lives. And we see this with a lot of illnesses where childhood trauma is a big precursor to mental disorders, to health disorders, to autoimmune conditions. And it does not yet, I believe that it will be again in the future, but as of right now, it is not being paid attention to or honored in the medical field because it doesn't make a quick buck. Why is that? Well, once you go and address your childhood traumas you have done with your parents, and you made your voice heard, and you addressed your adulthood trauma through scheduling that time for yourself and through having these nightly visions that were leading the way, you don't have to go back and do it over and over again. Maybe there will be a few times when you will go and clean up the rest. Like, you cannot express all of the emotions at once. Sometimes you'll need to go revisit and just check in, have I finished this? But this does not make money long-term. It gives you your freedom back. You're becoming your own agent of healing. You are the healer, and therefore it makes you a free person. And with you, we have a way to measure progress. When you came in, there were 23 symptoms, and every week we check in, and now we're down to like 2.5, 3.5, depends on the day. So let's talk about the progress that you made. You're down to literally occasional heart palpitations, which I know for anybody who has thyroid disorders, for them, like ears are perking up. Is it possible? And then we're working on a couple of other things. So talk to me about you've now, because you've released so much trauma, and we've seen this progress in your numbers, and we've seen the progress in your symptoms. What is it that you're working on right now? What is it that is driving you? And of course, then we'll talk about how you're going to one day show a clean bill of health to your doctor and yourself.
The progress has been, it's been beautiful, and the way that I feel has been completely different than what I started off and how I was feeling when I first got diagnosed. The initial progress was just energy levels, which was the important one for me, especially feeling like sometimes I couldn't sleep. I couldn't fall asleep. I was having insomnia, or then I would sleep and I would just always feel tired. I was finally, and still today, feel like I am getting sound sleep finally, and have way more energy throughout my day. And I feel more alert and more connected, more connected to my body, more connected and clear mentally. And because I just feel like before I was foggy as well. Like, I felt lost. I felt trapped by kind of the illness and not knowing what to do to move forward. And I think with the work that we've done, the progress has been physically feeling so much better, emotionally so much better. I know when things come up, it's a key to where I need to look deeper and release further. And that's a journey for a lifetime. Like that's going to come in our entire life. The work never ends. But it's having the tools and the resources to work through that and know when things come up emotionally that is a key or a roadmap to where we can do more work. So I just feel equipped. I feel equipped with those tools. I feel at peace. I feel like I have more harmonious relationships with my family, in even with, forgiving and releasing, the people that have been in my life in the past that maybe have hurt me, and understanding that, again, it's not about blame in my past. It's about forgiving, releasing, and honoring myself, my emotions, and what I need moving forward. Yeah, it's been great to just have only a few things that come up with the heart palpitation. It was probably one of the major symptoms that I had. And now it's more like I'm feeling stronger again. That
You're
box
working
of
out again,
I'm
right?
working out again, and that box of waters that I mentioned, like now I can pick it up no problem, and that has been just like a symbol of the strength for me. Yeah, and I gained all my weight back, so I'm back to a healthy weight. I feel more comfortable in my body and feel stronger. And I have, like you had mentioned, the heart palpitations will sometimes come up in between workouts because I'm lifting and doing weights, but it's not as extreme. It's just, it happens. I rest, I breathe, and I'm able to continue with the workout. But it's not happening where I would lay down to sleep at night and it's going really fast and hard and I can't sleep because of it. Like that doesn't happen anymore. And really, I think that just the main thing we're working on now is just getting my gut health to 100%.
And
I
getting
knew that.
and getting your numbers to 100%. And can we touch on
Yes.
your numbers a little bit of what happened? Because your doctor sent you home with a prescription medication and you looked at all the possible side effects and you go, oh, there's not a way I can go with my symptoms plus the possible side effects. So you decided to take this holistic route. And your last appointment with your doctor, your last visit, your doctor was quite impressed. And
I felt like I initially, when I first talked to the doctors about my diagnosis, about the plan for recovery, and they pushed the medication, I pushed back initially. I pushed back and told them I don't want to take the medication. I know that there's side effects, long-term side effects on the gut lining, which ultimately doesn't make sense for me because I'm trying to heal the gut. The gut is the source of autoimmune disease. Why would I take something that could ultimately ruin my stomach lining? And I felt like what was returned wasn't necessarily listening to what I was saying. It was more just pushing back and trying to instill fear in me that this would progress further, that I could have thyroid eye disease. There was just a lot of pushback. And so, with that on the initial front of it, I didn't want to fight with the doctors anymore. And I didn't want them to maybe say, like, we're not going to order these labs for you because you're not doing what we asked of you. So instead, I just didn't mention the fact that I wasn't taking the medication, and never did. And this last appointment, I have numbers that are normal now, no longer in the red. My T3 is normal. My T4 is almost normal. My TSH is
gonna get
not
there.
moving quite a
It's
bit,
gonna
but it's
get
gonna
there.
get there. I know it's moving with the other numbers. My last appointment was with the endocrinologist finally, which the specialist couldn't see me until recently. She said that it looks like the medication's working, that I made progress, and that she's happy to see that the medication's working, that the dose looks like it's a good dose, and we'll see how things progress in the coming months.
Well, I have to agree with your doctor. The medication that you have been implementing is working beautifully. Trauma release and changing the diet, addressing the deficiencies. Those are true medications that they're truly working miracles. Now, I know we're in a Western society, we're microwave kind of people. Put it in now so I can feel better tomorrow. You've chosen a different path. You've committed to slow healing. Again, compared to how long it took for us to get sick, it's still just a blip on the radar of time. But you
Yeah.
committed to slow healing so you can have long-term progress and long-term health as well. But the medications that you mentioned throughout this interview, they are working beautifully. And the best of all, these medications are going to be in your toolbox for the rest of your life. Because we've seen it with a lot of chronic conditions when a medication is recalled or medication is no longer made or they're substituting it. And my clients go from one medication to another. And when the body gets used to one, they're just, thrown into another pool of another symptoms possibilities. Where you are right now are going to have medication that lasts you a lifetime. The swelling on your neck has declined. Your numbers are looking better. The TSH, in just a matter of time, is going to get there. T3 already showed us that, hey, I'm in the green, T4 is lining up saying I'm next, and so on. And you've been able to accomplish something in 4 months that takes people years of trying to do, and they still couldn't do it. So again, I know we're almost 5 months in now, but your last labs report was about 4 months into us working together. Comparing 4 months to the years of you being sick, do you feel that the effort was worth the outcome?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. The effort always worth the outcome. And that's the thing, is these things take patience, time, and work. It's like you have to be ready to do the work.
Yeah, the work is a 4-letter word that not everybody likes to hear. And I think that is problematic with our society. I spoke to a couple once and they wanted to conceive. It was about 6 years ago. And I said, well, we have an 80% success rate with infertility, which is high by all standards. I said, but we take it a slow and steady approach. We focus on your health first. And yes, given I had clients who got pregnant in 2 weeks and 2 months, but it could take a year. Some of my clients got pregnant closer to the 12 months mark. And I said, so if you are just burning to have a baby, this is not a path to go, because you might end up getting pregnant or it might take you a year to get there. And they actually chose to go through the infertility treatment route, which actually has a very high failure rate, and it costs about $25,000 per cycle to do. So because some of us are very much trained of, if I pop in this pill today, can I have an outcome tomorrow? But the effort for me, because I'm not just a theoretical coach, I'm a very practical one. I've healed hypothyroidism and infertility and a pituitary tumor in myself. And for me now, 15 years later, I'm getting close to 50. I'm only 3 years shy, and I still look this way. So I'm okay, right? So there is a way for us to play the long-term goal game. For you, that's exactly what you've done, addressing trauma and fixing the gut and fixing the diet. Those are long-term tools that we're using. It's not like pop it in today and you're going to be great tomorrow. Some clients that I sometimes get impatient. They're like, 2 weeks in, why am I not better? And you said 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, slow progress. And some of the progress you and I measured with you was heart palpitations. They're not completely gone, but compared to the week before, how much by percentage do we think that is better? So slow, steady, getting there, but it's a permanent outcome to where the doctor can say, the medicine is working really well. Let's continue with that. And there's nothing that I love hearing more. It cracks me up all the time. But now you are, statistically at about 87% improved. You have about 3 symptoms left to go, and we still have another month together or so. With everything that you have accomplished so far, Karina, how do you feel about the next month? What do you think that life holds for you in the next month? And what does your life hold for you after you have healed yourself?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, the future holds a lot of hope and expansion and excitement for me. The next month, I hope to just continue to dive deeper with you. And you've done a great job at making me feel supported throughout this, and that I will again be equipped with those tools and be able to take that on, as long as I stay dedicated to what you've taught me, but then also what I've learned and what I've applied, that I will have everything I need moving forward. You're still there if I need it.
Just to speak to that, I know some people are listening like, no, she's gonna kick me out. No, you can stay with me forever.
Exactly. I was like, you're still there if I need you. I know that. And moving forward, I through a lot of this healing work and the healing journey prior to then meeting you and then the working with you, I know for me, the passions that have come up for me have been healing, holistic healing, really understanding that all of us have the power and the tools to heal ourselves, mind, body, spirit. We have the ability to heal our bodies, to heal our minds, to heal our emotions. we have all the things that we need. Sometimes we just need the tools and the guidance and the accountability to get to that point, which is why I've decided to get certified as a coach myself, like a spiritual alignment coach, because that's where I'm passionate about. I'm very passionate about, a little bit like woo woo, which I know is not for everyone.
Well,
And
no,
that's
we on this podcast and in my life, we don't call anything woo-woo because everything that has been considered woo-woo before now is confirmed by Western
science.
science. And so
Yeah.
science shows up on the screen like 5,000 years later, like we have proven. No, they just simply observed what we have known for a long time. Spirit,
Yeah.
soul, and body is nothing more than just one whole being. Emotions affect the physiology affects emotion, and so on and so forth. So there's no woo-woo stuff. So for us, we go into the spirit, soul, body realm, all of that, we bring it together. And we use various tools, but you and I both know we use it based on everybody's personal belief system. When I work with Christians, I use their belief system to support them. When I work with Muslims, I use that system. When I work with people who, the world will call New Age or atheists, I use the tools that would speak within their belief system, because nobody should be left outside of the gates of where the freedom resides to be outside just because they don't believe in a certain thing. We can absolutely reward, reframe, and make everything work for that specific spiritual religious belief system.
100%. Yeah, I truly believe that. I think we're all looking for the same things at the end of the day, regardless of the religious background, and I think at the end, we all just want to be happy and healed and loved. I am excited to continue my journey of continued work on myself, but then in creating my own toolbox, really applying that and helping others do the same.
Well, I'm going to raise my glass of almost empty water to 100% wellness by the end of
Yes.
January. That'll be
Yes.
my birthday present for me, for you to be completely whole. And
Thank
then
you.
from there, of course, to create another opportunity for another soul to go and become a coach and heal somebody. Nothing makes me happier. I wish I could clone myself and send us all over the globe to do this work. And this is exactly what we're doing here, because this is the work that has been missing and has been put on silence in the Western society. But we are the revolution that the medical world should be afraid of, and they are afraid, and they are making it known to us. But that's a conversation for another day. But this revolution is coming, and there will be millions of Elenas and Karinas going back outside into the world that we came from, the world of pain and suffering and physical suffering, and taking the tools that we now have to heal the rest. So Karina, thank you so much for your hour with me and for sharing your story with my audience. As a last word, as a parting word, if somebody is listening right now, whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's Hashimoto's, Graves' disease, endometriosis, PCOS, or whatever they're suffering with, what would be your parting word of wisdom if they were considering to work with me, but they're slightly like, will it work for me? Should I do it? Should I invest into myself? What would you tell them?
I would say, if you're considering working with Elena or investing in your health, look at, why is your body communicating to you right now? What is your body trying to tell you? If your body is not healthy 100% and some sort of emotional or misalignment in your life has created this illness, the best thing that you can do is invest in yourself. Invest in yourself, invest in your health, because I can guarantee, if you have an illness right now, that means that you are not aligned in other areas of your life, and you're probably not 100% happy and whole. And so in order to reach that happiness and wholeness, you need to invest in yourself and your health.
And as you mentioned earlier, and here's where I'm going to toot my horn a little bit, is we all have blind spots. Right?
Yes.
No matter how great we are, I'm good at what I do, and I still have blind spots. This last year, as I've explained in a couple of previous podcasts, I've taken a whole year off, save some people who, like you, reached out to me and said, let's work together. I didn't advertise, I didn't write blog posts, didn't create podcasts. I simply focused on healing myself. In the process of that healing, I found my mentors, my coaches in an area where I was not an expert in the area of plant medicine. I invested my time and money into them because I didn't want to take my time and waste my money on figuring it out on my own, because there were specialists who had a shortcut. So I'm somebody's shortcut. They were my shortcut. At one point, I said to one of my friends, I either spend this money to work on me, or I will never be able to earn any more money because I'd never want to go back to this again. So oftentimes, as you said, our emotional and physical health that will affect our ability to either have great relationships or to earn an income or to stay at our career or our job or all the other things. So to take that moment to consider to invest in a shortcut, which is doesn't mean you don't do the work, right, Karina? You still
Right.
do the work, but you invest in a shortcut that gives you a tool set that is already prepared and customized to you so that you can get to your outcomes expeditiously. And instead of figuring out how did Elena do it in the last 15 years, you can say, okay, we're going to do it in 6 months based on Elena's tools. And now I'm going to go start a new career helping others heal too. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you here. I know this is not goodbye for you and I, it's just goodbye here on a podcast. And to everybody that is listening, if you are in a place where Karina had found herself just half a year ago and you are struggling, you're saying there has to be a better way, there has to be a holistic, natural way, my friend, I'm here to tell you that there is. I'm here for you. I want to support you through this process. If I can help you get directed in the best direction to go, I'm here for that too. If you are not sure if this is for you, go to my website at 360impacthealth.com. Look at the interviews similar to Karina's. Look at case studies. Schedule your complimentary 15-minute call to speak with me or one of my team members where we're going to evaluate your situation and tell you very quickly what we think we can or cannot do. And if we think we can help, we're going to end up doing the interview that Karina mentioned earlier, where I interviewed her and she interviewed me, because I never take on somebody without first getting to know them. There's not a buy a button now on my website. You have to first go through a 2-call process to be auditioned to understand if we are a good fit. And if we are, the possibilities are like Karina's. You might end up walking away in 2, 3, 4, 6, or 5 months with your clean bill of health. And there's nothing better in the world than that. With that said, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Elena Medici. I want to wish you a fantastic rest of the day, and I will see you on the next episode of the Health Wizard podcast.